There's nothing itsy bitsy about this re-release from NECA Toys. Today we're going to be having a look at the Gremlins 2, the new batch. This is the Spider Gremlin. The most massive and most incredible Gremlins figure ever produced. When fully assembled, the Spider Gremlin stands over 10 inches tall and is nearly 15 inches wide, featuring a hinged jaw, ball-jointed shoulders, elbows, and wrists, and 8 massive spider legs that are also articulated, equaling over 30 points of articulation. It also includes Spider's serum bottle and a display stand. Even though we know that the packaging touts this as being a 10-inch tall figure and 15 inches wide, I'm still going to take the Ultra Measuretron 5000, which is actually its name moving forward. And we're going to figure out how tall this Gremlin stands, just to be on the safe side. Call it just reassurance on my part. Now, if I'm counting the top of his fin, the crest on his head, the figure is actually 10.3, so it's just a little bit over the quoted 10 inches tall. And then we'll go ahead and switch that to centimeters. 26.2 centimeters is how tall it is. And let's go ahead and switch that over to inches once again. And we'll measure it from, let's say, the tail to tail, which is about there or so. I guess you could spread the legs even further. I'm going to go, though, with that. From leg to leg, knee, if you want to call it a knee to the knee there, you're looking at 13 inches. Not quite 15. Switching that to centimeters, the figure is 33.2 centimeters in width. To do some size comparisons, I happen to have the original Gizmo here, at least Gizmo from the new batch. Really, you know what? I'm looking at the Gizmo here, and I'm looking, of course, at Spider Gremlin, and boy, oh boy, I miss the days of reviewing the Gremlins figures. If you guys would like to see me go back and review these, revisit these, let me know down below. In the meantime, though, there is little tiny Gizmo. Spider Gremlin technically needs the display stand, so I'm going to treat it as such. I'm going to put him actually with the stand still intact, so you can see how he stands next to a standard size Mogwai. Then, as another comparison, we can bring in the Mohawk here. His fin, unfortunately, is still really warped, but there is essentially, I believe this figure came later after Spider Gremlin did. I'm glad they actually released him in his regular Gremlin form, but just to put him next to the Spider Gremlin, let's see, we'll put Gizmo there, we'll put Mohawk right there, and there's the difference in height between the three figures. The torso is essentially the same as the Mohawk here, up to about this point. Looks like the arms and stuff might share similar molds, but obviously as well, the Spider Gremlin is a lot bigger than both of these figures. For his accessories, the Spider Gremlin comes with one lone accessory and one crucial accessory, of course, to get it from the Gremlin form to this. He needs the serum, the spider serum that's inside this beaker. Don't worry, it's not a real liquid, so I'm not going to spill it everywhere, turning everybody into arachnid people. But on the front, you can see that there is the spider emblem there on the front, and down below there's flammable. The liquid inside is what appears to be a solid mass of translucent blue plastic. Inside a container, a beaker that is a translucent smoky plastic as well. You can really technically have him holding it in either hand, but I find this is the more suited hand for holding it, just because the fingers are a little bit more closed shut. And you can see that he does hold it rather well. I do have one problem with the Spider Gremlin, and it's something I'll talk about, don't worry. You probably can already see the big problem I have with this particular figure is the drooping torso, but I'll talk about that in a second. That is the accessory, though, that he does come included with. While Spider Gremlin does take a nap, I'm just going to move him over for a slight bit, just to show you that this isn't my first rodeo. I've already had a look at this guy. Here is my original Spider Gremlin. somewhat intact, missing a few appendages. I actually benefited, or rather many of the collectors benefited from the fact that NECA has re-released many of their older pieces, being case in point one right here. Now this is my original one. This is the original Spider Gremlin that I had. For the most part, he is pretty much identical. There's nothing that they've changed from what I can see from one to the other. Paint may slightly differ, but certainly not enough to say, okay, this is the remake, the reissue, and then this is the original. But here's what the original looked like. I'm missing this leg right here, and I think there was only, yeah, it was one leg that was missing, and then of course I'm missing the display stand. I don't know what happened to it over the course of my many moves, but I ultimately just thought, you know what? This is a pretty affordable price. I'm not going to be paid like the scalpers prices online. So, you know, again, having a look at the Spider Gremlin here, and, you know, that's probably a lot easier than just trying to find the replacement legs and trying to find where that base went to. Other than that, though, it's the exact same figure. There's not really that much different to it. Although I have to admit, things like torsos and stuff have gotten a little bit looser over time. Okay, let's slide this guy back into the frame, and we'll go ahead and take the serum out of his hand. The Spider Gremlin is attached by a black rectangular display base with just one standalone black peg. For some reason, I thought that the original release had a clear post rather than a black post. I would have to go back and double check my original review. It plugs right into the under, I think this would be the thorax portion of the Spider. Not the easiest thing, mind you, to plug into place. Instead, it's really more just a case of you're pushing and kind of spinning a little bit until eventually it gets a good enough, you know, a good enough grasp of the torso. And then from there you can just sort of adjust the legs until they sort of look as if they're freestanding and they're holding the Gremlin up. Now you can angle this guy a little bit more and just kind of bring his legs up, but you're really only going to get so much clearance from the post itself. And again, I'm just really sad that the torso is so loose. I think ultimately what I think I might just end up doing is Frankensteining one of the legs off and taking, of course, the actual stand off and putting it on the other Spider Gremlin. In the meantime, though, this is the one that came out of the box, so this is the one that we're going to look at. Just want to take that off. And we'll have a look at his face. Some assembly is actually required when you get the Spider Gremlin out of packaging. The legs from this point, so the little ridges on the knees, from this point down, you have to install these legs. So the front legs, let me just show you here, the front legs here have to be installed, as well as all the other remaining 8 legs. They're the most difficult things to do and install, and even in the instructions they indicate the best approach, and one that I can certainly validate. This part right here, the ball joint sits inside the socket cavity. Just take the socket portion of the leg, not the ball joint, but the socket. Just submerge it for about 20 seconds in boiling water, really, really hot water. That softens the socket enough that popping the legs popping them in, at least, are extremely easy. If you could do it the other way around, but it only really softens the ball joint, you're still really forcing it in place. I did it once, and then I just heated this socket instead. Popped into place extremely easy, and then you have to do that, like I said, 8 different times. And what you end up getting, though, is a really nice representation of the way he looked in Gremlins 2, the new batch. A very superior sculpt from NECA Toys. If not for saying, unfortunately, the one problem with this guy is, I don't know if it's just from the fact that the mold's been used before, but the hinge joint here on the torso just doesn't catch. There's not enough that keeps it up, that a lot of times it just flops right over. Here's what the head sculpt looks like. A really nice representation of how it looked in the original Gremlins 2. There is Mohawk in all his glory. A very gummy looking, he's got very large gums. You can see there that they've sculpted in the tongue done a great job of on this paint. Like the paint itself is one thing that it's the Gremlins pieces as a whole I find is some of NECA's greatest paint jobbed figures. Just the level of the different layers of color. So you've got like the olive colored green, the yellow, the beige, of course the very piercing eyes that are made up of the yellow and the red. Got a little bit of the brown tan color in the ears, and of course the very vibrant coloring there on Mohawk's crest, which also carries down to the spine area of the figure as well. We just reach off camera, and again bringing in the ultimate Mohawk. You can see there's not really that much different between the two. I suppose if anything, the Mohawk here that was standalone is a little bit lighter in areas around his crest. Like the crest here is a more of a reddish beige color, where up at the top here on the Spider Gremlin it retains more the olive colored. The gums are a little bit on the lighter side as well. The Spider Gremlin here has a much darker, much darker actually, gum area as well as his tongue. The Gremlin, the Mohawk here, doesn't have as much the black paint on the interior as this one does here. I actually think I like the paint job much more on the Spider Gremlin than what we ultimately got here on the regular standing version of Mohawk here. Just move him out of the way. As we continue to look through the figure here, you've got lots of little scales, bumps, and protrusions all sticking out from the skin of the Gremlin here. Some nice pattern work there of some spots running down its arm. Got some of the scale there here on the side of its arm as well in that vibrant red. We tip him upside down here. It almost kind of looks like I'm looking at a crab rather than a spider, just more because of the rigid, bony nature of it. Of course, you've got your thorax, and you've got little protrusions sticking out there, really nicely marked and accented here in the black, which they've just done a really good job of dolloping that around here. Some nice transition colors of airbrushing happening between the beiges and the browns here, like how that's all kind of coming together. And of course you got the individual green legs, which each have their own individual deco and the spotting added on there as well. Spin the figure around, and then we've got his big bulbous abdomen, which actually does have some posability. You can rotate it left and right. It's a little bit more on the hollow end of it, where the rest of the figure feels like it's a little bit more solid plastic. But this does feel a little bit more on the hollow side. I like the end area here too. This little spike. I guess this would be the area in which he would secrete the spider webbing from the tail portion here. This is a slightly different shade of brown than the otherwise tan and lighter browns and oranges that they've used there. And then you've got the continued trend of the red carried over to the abdomen that is also present here on the front fins. I'd honestly be hard-pressed to find another NECA figure that has this much paint to it in one focal figure, if you will. I mean, just the level of spots and stuff alone, just if you count only solely the spots, how much this figure has, starting from his head, smaller areas around in the torso section, much bigger, spottier, larger splotches of the black running onto its hand, and then again across the thorax portion leading into the abdomen here. Posability on this guy. Now, unfortunately, this is the only problem with this figure. And I guess it's not necessarily going to be everyone's figure, but unfortunately, it's this humble reviewer's figure that has the problem with the excessively loose joint here. I suppose one fix I could do, I could add, just kind of seeing there, I could spray some pledge in there, which apparently is supposed to thicken up a joint, just to make sure that it's not going to flop around. Because really the weight of the head alone is enough that the torso section simply just falls over way too much. So I'm going to have to go in and fix that up. Or like I said, I may take just a couple of the legs off and make use of course, the display stand. And I might just add that to my original Spider Gremlin, just so I've got one that actually has a much stiffer joint. In the meantime, though, his posability, his head rotates technically all the way around, like that. His mouth, really nice, opens and closes, depending on how you want to have it displayed. The ears, I thought actually were ball jointed, but it doesn't seem like it's something you can rotate on this particular figure. Of course, it goes without saying, he's got the ab-torso crunch. Looks like he might have a waist swivel right here, but that's not actually the case. Just actually a hinge back and forth. Let's not also forget he's got a ball joint in 2 places in the neck. Let me just move the arm down there for a second so you guys can see. So he's got a ball joint here. Well, not here. Here in the base of the neck. And then he's got a secondary ball joint here. So that works in 2 independent rotations. You've got the rotation here for solely the head, and then you've got a secondary here at the base of the neck. The hands hinge outward. You can also rotate them back and forth, hinge them back and forth this way. And the hands rotate this way, hinge back and forth. No individual articulation in the fingers. There's nothing you can really do there. As we continue our way through the figure, so starting here and working our way down. Like I said, he's got the ball joint here in the abdomen, so you can rotate that all the way around. Something a little bit eerie, the fact I'm holding something this size. I feel like I'm actually holding, like I said, a real crab or a real spider that's immediately just going to get down and start running across the table. I'll probably be over there, though, when that happens. And then when it comes to each of the individual legs, let me just show you here. The legs are on a ball joint. So these hinge back and forth. You can rotate them technically, I guess, all the way around if you wanted to. And then each of the individual legs, let me just show you here, I'll flip this around. Each of the legs are also ball jointed. These are the sections, the knuckles in which you're going to be attaching into place when you first get the figure. So those have a ball joint there. Now these are the shorter legs. So if I bring these legs down, these 2 front ones here are the shorter of the 8. So remember that when you are putting this guy together, the longer legs are going to be the 3 at the back. The shorter legs are going to be the ones in the front. For these legs, you've still got the ball joint. These rotate back and forth. Then you've got the socket ball joint in which you would have attached. Then you've got a secondary ball joint here. So you get 1 extra one here versus the ones that are on the front. This carries its way all through the other 3 legs, where each of the legs have essentially 1, 2, and 3 different elbows or different sockets, allowing you to cater really the legs the way that you want. I can pleasantly say, though, that despite for the fact that the torso is way too loose, none of the legs seem to have suffered any quote-unquote mold degradation, which does not seem to be something that affects NECA toys necessarily, but Hasbro toys, for example, are notorious for this. You might have a lot of loose joints because they excessively reuse joints. And then we'll go ahead and then reattach the the display stand here. Helps if you plug it into the right place. Just kind of wiggle it in place. And there you have, granted, yes, a rather loose torsoed Spider Gremlin, but a pretty cool figure nonetheless, and something I definitely wanted to revisit in this review, even if he's going to be taking a nap. Now, one thing I want to stress, though, here in Final Looks is just because mine had a loose torso may not mean that everybody's will have the same problem. I may have had the luck of the draw where mine just happens to be excessively loose, but yours may be perfectly fine. If you did manage to get this re-release of the Spider Gremlin, let me know down below if you've had any issues with loose legs, loose torsos, loose arms, anything like that. Granted, yes, I did have the original Spider Gremlin, and shy for, of course, the fact that it had 1 missing leg and 1 base, I couldn't find those anywhere, so the more logical step was I wanted to pick this guy up again, put him back to the splendor that he was in his initial form when he did actually have the extra leg and the extra base. Unfortunately, though, getting him in aftermarket, I wasn't going to be paying the prices that I did, and luckily for me, the folks over at NECA decided to revisit and re-release this guy. NECA Toys and Diamond Select are one of the few companies that are doing this, re-releasing existing figures that they've released in their catalog before, and giving them not so much a fresh coat of paint, but a new distribution. I like that this is the case because it certainly eliminates scalpers from charging exorbitant prices if you ever want to pick up these figures for yourself. Usually the logical sense, especially when it comes to larger figures like Spider Gremlin here, is just wait it out. Don't pay the prices that you would expect to find this guy on eBay for. Just give it time. NECA will eventually re-release him. And luckily, to my benefit, they did re-release this guy, and I think he hasn't looked any bit better. He looks just as good as he did when I first picked up this figure, and I'm going to overlook for the fact that he does have the loose torso because that may not be everyone's figure. So I'm going to say I'm very happy with now finally having a completed Spider Gremlin back in my collection. Like I said, this guy is now being re-released, so online stores like Big Bad Toy Store, for example, or Entertainment Earth, or any place that you guys shop, you should be able to find this guy now back at a more affordable price. Stay away from scalpers. That's all I'm going to say. In the meantime, though, we were having a look today at a revisit, a throwback, if you will. Even though it's not the same figure, we were looking once again at the NECA Toys Gremlins 2, the new batch. This was the Spider Gremlin. One of my all-time favorite NECA pieces, I might also add there as well. If you guys wanted to go back and have a look at some of my other NECA reviews, or specifically the NECA Gremlins reviews, there's a playlist designated just for that. And hey, like I said over the course of this review, if you guys personally would like to see me go back and revisit the Gremlins figures, let me know down below in the comments section. I'm sort of feeling nostalgic here for going back and having a look at the Gremlins once again. I just recently was playing the Gremlins new batch on Nintendo. How's that for old school? Kind of just got me nostalgic for going back and having a look at the Gremlins once again. So if you guys would like to see that, let me know down below in the comments section. More videos, guys, will be coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.